Hey, it's live streaming time, and it's me, Carmine DeStefano, your bookman. I'm here for you to help bring you some more knowledge and reality to a very unpleasant internet. Don't want to say world, I'll say community, since that's what all the people that influence here like to refer to themselves and all of their sycophants, the community. So, here on this community, I'm here to talk about what's posted on the title, as well as some other things. My weather report, as always, it is cloudy and cold, and I am tired of the winter. Tired of it. Can't do it anymore. Don't want to do winter anymore. I've had it. And it's so funny because in my area, I've even got a little bit of a chill because I just drank cold water. But in my area, you will see at the beginning of the year that you like snow, which I don't know why you would. You frigid temperatures, and then within about 5 months, you're sweating your ass off. It's amazing to me how it works, but that's how it works. So I wanted to talk about a bunch of things today, and one of the reasons why I started this early is because I'd like to get them all in here. Aside from what became knowledge recently, this past week since my last live stream, my previous live stream once again had the same, what do you call it? Followed the same pattern as anything else that seems to be a negative tilt towards the Nintendo Switch 2 and Nintendo as a whole. And is my videos don't anymore. That was because I was doing movie reviews. Critics now because they don't see likable characters anymore. But over 10 years ago, before they were getting taken down and I was being threatened of losing my channel, back when I was a partner even, what I was doing was pointing out how bad Hollywood was then and has been pretty much always. So that's one of the reasons why I get into the whole thing about how the discussion that's been tabled about whether or not video games are art should never be discussed, because they're not, and they shouldn't be considered that, nor should any developers try to make that, because that's not good gaming, and this is what has led us to where we are now. So the format is a real simple one, and this goes without saying, but it started more or less. It was innovated. The only thing that Sony ever innovated. Man, you can't really even say Microsoft because a lot of their games don't follow this. But what Sony has created was, in the video game genre, an attempt to be more than just video games by not trying hard at all. So once the technology was able to deal with it, to handle it, what Sony did was they would film people, superimpose video games, CGI more or less, on top of them, and try to write some kind of relatable story with some kind of relatable characters in order to win awards. And they would bribe people as well, which has been proven many times. This is not something I'm making up. This is something you would hear from a lot of other of your influencers. And here are my miserable excuse of a channel that I've been doing for over 20 years. No, not over, but about 20 years. It will be over 20 years. That I haven't put any money into outside my cameras, my microphones, and whatever. It's one of the reasons why I can't get anywhere with this. I have noticed this. I've pointed this out. I have reviewed some of their games. I have played through some of their games. And I can tell you with full confidence, Sony exclusives are some of the worst mainstream popular games I've ever played. And I can tell you that with other more popular channels, they will also explain to you, because they're angry about Sony replacing the main characters that they write are male characters. They just put women in the place of them. But they will say the same thing, that Sony bribes. Sony promises you consoles, subscriptions, money, whatever it takes for them to be out there as the premier gaming company. And it kind of worked for a while, not working that much anymore. And just to show you the state of this company, recently there was a game that was released called Code Violet. And what Code Violet was trying to do is what Stellar Blade tried to do. They tried to take a beautiful woman model, which kind of could be construed as a pathetic attempt to draw in the male audience that's been complaining about unattractive females and stuff, when really they're complaining about manly men not being there anymore. Formulate a game around what is an internet darling in Dino Crisis, a series I never heard of before until recently. Now, listen, I'm not going to lie. When I had to work full time, when I was not thinking about doing anything other than trying to get married, trying to find a woman I can have kids with, trying to get a good job at a college, trying to finish college, everything, I wasn't really into video games. And I didn't get magazines and everything until about 10 years ago, which I stopped really looking at about 2 years ago, because I would call it was Game Informer, due to the fact that I still am, and I have to go back to GameStop to ensure I maintain my subscription as a Pro Rewards member. And that magazine, Game Informer, I would call PlayStation Monthly, because all I saw was what Sony's doing, what PlayStation's doing, the 5 or 6 exclusives every 10 years they have, being blown out of proportion as to how great they're going to be, most of which get forgotten. Nothing about Nintendo. In fact, when the Switch 1 was first released, they had a whole article about how it was like a B or something like that. Made it seem as if Nintendo was dying, which, by the way, if you thought that, you were out of your mind. Just so that you know. Yeah, the Wii U wasn't successful. It still made billions. And on top of that, it was selling the 3DS, which outsold the Xbox 360, okay? Or sold about the same amount of consoles, over 80 million. And that was bad for Nintendo. Nintendo wasn't going anywhere. And that's not even including the amount of software Nintendo was selling at the time, including the independence which the Wii U showcased. Also helping independence become a lot more mainstream. So when you look at what Sony has been producing, I give them credit for some quality to it. It's the same game over and over again, but it's some quality. However, Code Violet attempts to give you sex appeal, dinosaurs, and a bunch of other stuff. Now, just so that you know, this is what the wonders of United States-based lazy capitalism can grant you. This company has made, I think, 4 games. It is a company of 4 brothers. And they had enough financial support to make the games they and their fans want, as they claim. They're all unpolished, unfinished, unwanted piles of shit. All of them. And they have 10 more games coming out. And they have said, now whether or not this is something like Bloodborne, which is still the greatest Sony exclusive ever made, and it's not because Bloodborne is that good. It's good. That's better than any Sony exclusive, including Crash Bandicoot, or that Kyrie in the Spring Forest thing that was supposed to be released. It was one of the flagship exclusives that was going to be released on the PlayStation 5 upon its release, but it wasn't just on the PlayStation 5. It was on the PlayStation 4, like pretty much every game on the PlayStation 5. That's not made by anyone, any third party, right? And they made this game, which was supposed to be their magnum opus. And from what I've seen, it is terribly unpolished, terribly unfinished. The woman is attractive. The women are attractive to me, but that's because I'm a horny, disgusting pervert, and I'm an old, horny, disgusting pervert. They don't look real by any stretch of the imagination. Every aspect of the game screams 2 generations ago. It's like a PlayStation 3 game. It doesn't look fun. The puzzles look ridiculous. Everything about it is so bad that even the Sony PC biased internet is crushing this thing for the most part. There are people that say they enjoy it, and that's fine. When you start the game off, you're playing as a chick in a t-shirt and panties. And she's got big tits, and she's got a kind of a flat ass for a woman with tits that big, but whatever. It's not like when you're playing Stellar Blade and her hips are the size of the screen. So it's just such a bad game. From what I've seen, from the reviews I've seen. And one thing you have to be careful with, and it's so funny how this happens, but if the internet doesn't like you, you got to be careful. They will go into the time that you pulled your friend's pants down in elementary school. They'll expose everything about you. And they've exposed this company. And it's just so pathetic how a game like this, which is about 4 hours from what I've been told, can be worth $50, $60. It doesn't look like it's in 4K. It barely looks like it's in HD. It's terribly put together. The backdrops are so ridiculously uninteresting, more so than Sony exclusives. But it's a Sony exclusive because, as the creators said, they don't exploiting the woman character through modifications, which is hilarious because they give her so many slutty outfits. Hey, I have no problem. I have no problem. But the story is about how she was being cloned over and over again because apparently she can have dinosaur babies. It's so fucking stupid. Everything about it is so fucking stupid. And just so that you know, it is a Sony exclusive. It also has stealth missions. It also has long cutscenes that go nowhere. So yeah, Sony exclusive. But as I said, it's not a Sony exclusive in the sense that it's like Bloodborne where they've helped fund it. It's a Sony exclusive because the creators apparently don't want to try to develop for PC as well. Or Microsoft. Keep it off the Switch too. Thank you very much. And they just go with Sony's PlayStation 5. Now, you could say, well, why didn't they just create it on PC and make it a Steam exclusive or whatever, or just make it on Steam or what have you? Not for me to tell you. So yes, this is a Sony exclusive. You can only get it on the PlayStation 5. So I'm sure that Sony is so proud of themselves. They were able to create, in the last few months, a Lost Souls or whatever that game was called that was supposed to be another From Software ripoff. The Ghost of Yotai, which, again, and I call bullshit on all of these internet influencers and everything like that, when they go off on Ghost of Yotai because of the main character, ignoring the fact that it's the same game as Ghost of Tsushima, probably even gives you the opportunity to play the game in classic Japanese noir film imagery and whatever, camera, what have you. And when they make it seem as if what made Ghost of Tsushima such a great game that they were looking forward to a sequel to, it always revolves around the main character. But when I was watching somebody, because I don't say pretty much I don't say anything without investigating first. And just to prove my point, somebody pointed out to me last week, yes, PlayStation 2 is a DVD player, not a Blu-ray player. I'm sorry. I apologize. I was wrong. It was a DVD player. Still scratched them and made them unplayable. But I misremembered because the fact that I was thinking it was more advanced than it really was. It was a Blu-ray player, or a DVD player, not a Blu-ray player. PlayStation 3 was a Blu-ray player. PlayStation 3 didn't sell like the PlayStation 2 because the PlayStation 2 was a DVD player as it was sold. And as I've mentioned, Sony is not a video game company. They are a mechanics electronics company. They make VCRs, Blu-ray players, DVD players, television. They make movies. They do pretty much everything. And for those Sony fans that love their games and whatever, if it weren't for Nintendo, they wouldn't have been in the video game industry at all. It's just that simple. They were working, they were collaborating on a out of, and Sony took the ideas and ran with them. That's how PlayStation started. And I find it so hilarious how a bunch of 35 years, everything involving macabre, disgusting violence and cursing and swearing is edgy and serious. Meanwhile, you're playing a console, it's called PlayStation. But whatever the case, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. They have this exclusive, it's an atrocity. Now, what does this have to do with the title about spoiled Nintendo fans? Now, listen, you want to call me a Nintendo fan? Fine. I will say a Nintendo enthusiast because it's entertainment. It's the best quality entertainment in the genre, whether people want to admit it or not. It's the best hardware, the most durable hardware. They have done something that I'm going to get into sometime in the stream. People are just not grasping here on the internet. And the internet is not the world. The internet is a small bubble of spoiled, selfish, greedy, rich internet types, geeks who think they're nerds, not smart enough to be nerds, who then influence, like, and believe things that aren't true. One of the reasons why I'm trying to get this absolutely pathetic channel going somewhere without putting money into it, because I want to try to help people understand facts. The fact is, the world has spoken. Sony sucks. Microsoft sucks. They make nothing. Microsoft's consoles are virtually gone. They have a handheld that is not a hybrid. They keep trying to act like it could be. It's not. Whether it plays off of an Xbox or your PC, you still have to get one of the other consoles. It doesn't play on its own unless it's a handheld. And that's all they have. And it's grossly way too expensive. It's not selling. And they don't need it to, because they have shilled enough money from people on their garbage Windows, especially this modern version of them that was ever put together. But you're talking about a company whose CEO for years was a guy who stole everything and had no problem, if you knew that. And that's Bill Gates. Never graduated from college, stole all his ideas. He is a fucking fraud. And this company decided to look at Apple and one of its biggest scams, which is, hey, our operating system is too much for the cell phone or the computer that you have now. You got to get a new one. And Microsoft saw that and said, ooh, what a great idea. And now they're blowing up people's PCs that used to be pretty damn functional with Windows 10 by when they don't have any exclusives. Like, what would you get from Microsoft? Now, granted, Nintendo has a 10-year exclusivity deal with Microsoft, but what do you get? There are rumors about a Call of Duty game, but they can import this Fable 4 that's been in the works for the past, 30 years, it seems? Are they going to incorporate Halo? They're going to incorporate Gears of War? Probably not, right? Same thing with the Sony exclusives. Sony's been on PC for how many years? See, aside from Code Violet. So the cross, it's just that theirs suck and nobody cares about it, because you don't get an Xbox, period, or you don't get a PlayStation, whatever, for the exclusives. You get them for the third-party support. Now, for whatever ungodly reason, Microsoft did sell its original Xbox because of Halo. But after that, it was more or less playing online with games, some that already had Halo. But for the majority, because nobody really bought an Xbox, nobody really bought an Xbox One, the reason why the Xbox 360 sold was for the online support and the third-party support. That's it. At this stage, if you port your games to an Xbox or a Microsoft console, you're shooting yourself in the foot and the head at the same time. It's not worth it. Okay? Not worth it. Now, you could say, well, it's pretty much like doing it on PC. Fine, whatever. But why? Why? Why waste the packaging? But what does this have to do with Nintendo fans, as I was saying? Well, here's the thing. This is what I laugh at. I appreciate people that have knowledge, or at least that's why I love all my supporters here, because you're smart. But there comes a problem. When you look at what Sony has released since PlayStation 5, most of which their exclusives are on the 4 anyway. And a lot of their exclusives revolve around The Last of Us being re-released how many fucking times? Or The Last of Us 2, which apparently nobody liked, despite the fact that, like the Ghost of series, it was more of what you had from the original one. It was the same thing. So the original one is a masterpiece, which, by the way, I, as somebody who studies art and is trying to be an artist myself, I find it to be a horrifying, disgustingly ignorant concept and insulting to people who lived and died to promote and fashion their own legitimate art, calling a fucking video game a masterpiece. Okay? You want to argue with me about this? You go right ahead. But there's something to be said, whether you understand the gravity of words and language, which the internet in the United States has no concept. You're saying masterpiece is Michelangelo's David and Dragon Age Origins. There's something wrong there, you don't think? About a statue carved from marble, about the work to just get the damn materials and the story that's being said in this near pristine, perfect sculpture. There's something to be said about that which has withstood the test of time and has had experts and critics admit that it was one of the greatest works ever made. And all the strife and the pain and everything that he went through to put this together. And comparing that to a fucking BioWare pile of trash that had boring ass backdrops, 30-something hours of a dice rolling combat system that made you sit back and watch, for the most part, a game that was putting me to sleep, that the people that I interacted with that heard of it would tell you, yeah, that shit was boring, that somehow you're going to compare the two. Even taking a game like Super Metroid, which was one of the all-time great games, and comparing it to that, no. See, that's how you have to be careful when you use words. And don't tell me they're different. Just give it a different word. Otherwise, you sound like an ignoramus on a universal scale. In the small circle of 6 years on the internet, yeah, they'll say masterpiece. It's not masterpiece, okay? Video games are not art. They're not masterpieces. Get off that shit, please. I'm begging you. I'm just begging you. For the sole purpose of the legitimacy of the word and words in general, stop saying masterpiece and art for video games. Please. You won't. You'll argue with me, even though I'm older than most of you, and I know more than most of you because I've done the study, I've done the research, and you're wrong, and it's not an opinion. Don't give me the opinion thing, all right? That is a lame-ass excuse. Yeah, if you're taking a test in school, your opinion can't be right or wrong for a question. But no, you could be wrong no matter if it's your opinion or not. That can't be your out clause. Well, it was my opinion. Then stop stop acting like it's fact, because you're wrong. But whatever the case, let's put that aside for a second. For everything that Sony has not delivered in their PlayStation 5, for everything that they keep promising for the next generation, because it's been about 5 minutes since their last Pro release, which is the same as the first. Okay, PlayStation 5 Pro is the same as the PlayStation 5. No reason for 7 years later to not release another console as they claim. For Sony to have one, maybe two states of play where they announced stuff like Concord, which collapsed immediately. And it wasn't just because of fat, ugly women and pronouns, but for them to have a state of play to announce that, other games that are coming out on every other console, and maybe Wolverine, which you know like Spider-Man 1 and 2, which had stealth missions, and not from Spider-Man himself, and long-winded cutscenes that got absolutely nowhere with anything, tried to validate and justify villains who originally were put together to just be villains, and take a classic, stunning character in Mary Jane and make her plain Jane, more so in the second one than the first. For that to not be enough evidence that they're going to absolutely destroy a Wolverine game, which is the only other saving grace they have. This, and you don't hear a word. Everything Sony makes, the internet, Sony fans, they turn it into absolute gold. Everything, it seems. Even this Code Violet disaster, some fans are trying to make it seem as if it's really good. Then you have Nintendo fans. The Switch 2 sold over 5 million consoles its first month. That's unprecedented. It's never going to happen again. It is a piece of technology, just like the first one, with the only exception being the Switch Lite, that is untouchable, just like motion controls, untouchable, to the point where some of these comments that I keep getting, and I'm just assuming that some of you are bots. I can't imagine you're real people, because you write these long-ass scripts involving things that aren't fucking true. And it sounds like every last bit of fabricated rhetoric from the anti-Nintendo bias here on the internet. But in my previous stream, another person wanted to make it seem as if the Switch 2 is just a tablet. The Switch 1 and the Switch 2. Let me explain this to you one more time. You buy the console, you have a dock and a portable. You have two controllers called Joy-Cons that connect to the sides of the portable. You can, at that point, hook the portable, well, not the portable, the dock, with just one HD cord, not 40 AV cord, one HD cord. One HD cord. So now what? We're going to say that Sony's PlayStations and Microsoft's Xboxes, their tablets too, because you need an HD cord or an HDMI or anything to connect the input and the output into the television and back and forth. Is that what we're saying? So it is a docked home console. You can even on the Switch 2 connect it to the internet through an Ethernet cord. It's a console, a home console that plays at 4K 120 frames per second. It can, right? You then have the ability to take those Joy-Cons and turn them into a handheld controller, okay? Or you can buy a Pro controller, which you can keep connected like I do, or play it disconnected if you've charged it enough. And that charge goes on for a long time. You can then take the two Joy-Cons, separate them from their base, put them on the console, and take the screen within the dock out and play it as a, well, let's not say Steam Deck, because the Steam Deck is not as clear and doesn't run as well as the Switch 2 when it's portable. So when somebody tries to tell you it's a tablet, or when someone gives me this other comment that has popped up twice in two videos involving the Switch 2 specifically, not a game, just the Switch 2, about how, well, I got the Steam Deck because I was willing to spend another extra $100 or so for what? A foggy, shitty, portable console. Cool. Steal games for free. Whatever. If you can do it, have at it. Beat the system. I'm a big fan of that. But to make it seem as if that somehow is the same thing as saying, I got the other version from the other company of the hybrid console is just lunacy. It's not a fucking tablet. It is not a fucking portable. It can be one, but it is a hybrid. It doesn't project anything from the screen on the handheld version to turns it into a home console. What are you not understanding about this? So this goes to show you how the internet keeps people completely ignorant towards reality, and they keep reacting to the ignorance of reality. This is not comparing apples to oranges, or even apples to apples, or even apples to screwdrivers, okay? You're comparing a fucking snail to a spaceship. It is a completely different thing. Hybrids, there are only two that I know of, as opposed to handhelds that can project or carry over. Completely different things. And people that say the library wasn't any good, the console's been out for 7 months. Let me ask you something. You know what the Switch 1 is, right? Switch 1 is one of the highest selling consoles in the history of consoles, and it did it in a fraction of the time. A fraction of the time it took the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, which has been out since the 80s. A fraction of the time it took the PlayStation 2 and its DVDs and the DVD player peripheral, which took 15, 20 years. It has pretty much sold as many consoles in 8 years. Now we're going on to 9. And it's not going to sell as much because we have a Switch 2. Do you know how many games were released on the Switch 1? Over 10,000. Over 10,000 games, from shitty hentai card games that they're trying to hide to big-ass exclusives like Super Mario Odyssey, Splatoon 3, so on and so forth. Pokemon games. Has about 10,000 pieces of software, some of which are mainstream third-party supported games. You can, if you download them, and if you have specific games SD cards. You can, if you download them, and if you have specific games SD cards, you can seamlessly carry that over to the Switch 2. Here's something else that you're not grasping. Then they play better because the Switch 2 hardware is 10 times more powerful, according to the people that put it together, so it could be false advertisement, 10 times more powerful than the Switch 1. So you can play them. In fact, there is a channel that dedicates itself to how much better games play on the Switch 2 than the Switch 1. Frame rates, all that other stuff that people find to be so important. To say that a console, which on day one had about 10,000 available titles to it and new exclusive titles, somehow not worth the library space and the money for that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Well, it didn't have a good launch. It had 10,000 games that were available to it. You can go to the Nintendo store and download any game on the Switch 2 that you could download on the Switch 1. I could play Dark Souls Remastered on the Switch 2. I could play Dark Souls Remastered on the Switch 2. And what's the problem? I don't understand what you're getting at. So now if you're saying exclusive, well, it's been out for 7 months. However, in that 7-month period, we had the release of Mario Kart World, which the internet tried to make into a pile of shit. A month later, the release of Donkey Kong Bonanza, which should have won Game of the Year because it was an actual video game and not trying to be a movie. Although I keep saying Expedition 33 did have some very nice looking women in it. But the difference between cutscene, ooh, let me float around a desolate map and fight some weird monstrosity using a parry riposte system in a turn-based game. Okay, interesting. I'm invested. Just to get more cutscene. And all this stuff is one linear path, which you guys don't like, apparently. That or 5 to 30 hours worth of just beating the hell out of everything. And puzzles. And platforming masteries. And boss fights that had their own little nuance. And switching through one, but all right, now it's a Friday. Now it's a stream. Everybody, live and recorded, Buria is here. The 5074. We are now in good hands. We are doing great. Buria, glad to have you back. You're doing phenomenally. So he's here, we're good. I'm just trying to give some knowledge to people. So you got to bear with me. But anyway, gameplay so many different ways. And for people, and another thing that the internet drives me nuts with, for people, I'm glad you're good, man. I'm glad you're good. You're my concern. I'm not being facetious, I'll be honest. But the whole thing, it's for kids. No. Hello Kitty adds 1 + 2 is for kids. Because adults can't get any joy, typically, I wouldn't think, or any challenge out of that. You go and watch some of the, you don't even have to get to the tryouts. Just watch some of the puzzles in Donkey Kong Bonanza and tell me how kids can do that. Because I know people who have mastered the game that still have difficulty with some of those parts. So, and the boss fights too. So, no, it's not for kids. It's for everyone, meaning everybody can get joy out of it. Should have won Game of the Year. But I wouldn't expect the PC, PlayStation-centric Game Awards to give Nintendo its due credit. And I am thinking of making a video, Billy, of how full of shit these guys are anyway, because of the fact that they keep going on about how video games have to have storyline, they have to have likable characters, and they have to have gameplay mechanics that are different, blah, 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 blah. And you don't even mention Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 had everything. It was a fresh idea. It told a story that's relatable to everybody in an elite class bleeding the poor dry to live forever. On top of it, it had great characters, including my beloved Uni, and a lot of the classes. And all these different classes that change up the gameplay. You can seamlessly flip from one character in the party to another. It had the new chain attack schematic with the overkill mechanic, which can grant you so many extra experience points, everything like that, so you can level up quick. Everything about Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is what was missing. Granted, it's an anime, but everybody on the internet loves anime and manga and all that shit. So I didn't think that would be a problem. On top of that, it had some real serious scenes, but you did have some cackling villains that would just irritate you. You did have a murdering psychopath for the sake of being a murdering psychopath. But at the same time, it was just such an extraordinary game overall. And for the internet and the Academy to not even mention it when they say stuff like that, like, oh, AAA gaming has to get better, like Xenoblade Chronicles 3, you're full of shit. You don't want good games. You just want to complain about bad games, which were bad from before they were re-released or had sequels. Sorry to tell you. So anyway, so then you had Donkey Kong Bonanza. You then had a mother-sucking Pokemon game, which, as I've mentioned a million times before, from what I can tell you, the original versions that these purists are all about, those are for kids. But I've watched every Pokemon mainline game, every one, more or less. This was the only one that I stopped and went, if I had to, I would. And I wouldn't have a problem with it. My friend who's an adult, who has a full-time job and everything, he was enjoying the hell out of it. And yet the internet, especially one particular influencer that I used to have a great deal of respect for that I've lost because of his review, was going off on how it's like Dark Souls. How is it like Dark Souls? You grab a blade or a hammer or something and you have to kill things and it's from them and have to pick up your souls. How is it like Dark? Because you roll dodge? It never made sense to me that I would go up to a creature, a Pokemon, that was whatever, and have one of my Pokemon come, and it would never. It's got fangs, right? Feels threatened, doesn't it? Yeah, no, I'm sure it is. I'm telling you, if I had to play it, I would have no problem with it. Okay? And I played Sword and Shield, and I just was like, yeah, whatever. I breezed through that game, except for the final boss, because after a while, it was like, look, let's just get this over with. That's my thing, is especially when I'm doing Let's Plays, let's just get this over with. So you had Pokemon Z through A. You then had Hyrule Warriors. Yeah, I did watch that. That looks pretty good too. Especially with the whole vehicle thing. That looks like a really good game. And I'm not into Pokemon. I don't care. Never watched the cartoons. Don't care about the spin-offs. I did play Pokemon Unite, because I have to compete and waste my time on online competitive games. Yeah, no, if you think Bonanza's, you're, yeah, but anything From Software made or anything Sony's made exclusively, those are beautiful games. Yeah, it's a desolate, rotten world with ugly people. How is it beautiful? Because it's real looking? That doesn't mean beautiful, especially coming from the internet, which thinks that the modern day woman is ugly on the video game forum. How is that a beautiful? It had color. Oh, no, that's fine. It had color. It had texture. It had surface differentiate. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. All right, granted, it had some weird rock creatures, some of which looked like giraffes, others that looked like lions. But hey, I found that to be funny. That game was great. I still have it. I'm not getting rid of it. I won't get rid of it. I'll stream it again sometime. I don't know when, but I will. Right now, I'm going back into Metroid Prime 4 on Friday nights on Twitch, which, God, that game is great. It's not, I love it. That game is great. And listen, this is coming from me, who was going to make a video about how Metroid Prime was underrated. Maybe you're overrating the original Metroid Prime games, because if you think that it deviated or it wasn't as good, you don't know what you're talking about. I played the original 3 multiple times each. I am a Metroid guy. Yeah, no, it's not. That's a stupid ass concept. That's a stupid ass concept. By the way, Mario Odyssey isn't even a 3D Mario clone. When have you ever thrown a hat at something and became that thing? It's never happened. You have your suits. You couldn't throw your hat at a T-Rex and be a T-Rex. It's never happened. And Mario, from what I know, never destroyed the ground to fight a boss or find fossils or banana gems to upgrade himself. Yeah, not a Mario clone. It's 3D. So if that's a Mario clone, Bonanza, then I guess Elden Ring is a Mario clone too, because it's 3D, right? You could just walk around, you could platform even. Isn't that a Mario clone? It's like these people that say that the Switch 2 is it's a tablet. Why? How? It's a hybrid. It's a completely different thing. What are you talking about? But here's another thing. Okay, so I wanted to get into that. Yeah, 2 completely different games. But I want to get into this, Maria, because I wanted to talk about why I'm saying Nintendo fans are spoiled. So then you have Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, which, by the way, wasn't great. It was good. Went on as long as you wanted to, which was pretty long. I did all the maps. Did every one. The vicious battles suck ass. The vicious battles, Maria, they suck ass. Don't do them. Don't do it to yourself, okay? They are horrifying. But still fun. Had a good time with that. Then you had Kirby Air Riders. Then you had Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, which was the best game out of all of them. Whether people want to admit it or not. Best game out of all of them. This was in 6 months. The Switch 2 outsold every console in 6 months. And there are rumors that it outsold the Switch 1 in its first year in 6 months. So the trajectory is like this. This is Switch 1, right? Like the Switch 1's like here. Switch 2 is up here. It's outselling the Switch 1 by miles from its first year. Not even worth talking about. And last week I was mentioning the stupidity of, well, it's down this percentage from the Switch 1's first Christmas, first holiday season. The Switch 1 was a cheaper console, was out longer, had a 3D Mario game, and oh, by the way, was brand new. Brand new in its concept. Oh, and by the way, it wasn't selling as well as the Switch 2 was beforehand. So all the people that were getting it, that wanted it, they already got it. All the people that may have wanted to get it beforehand because of how fast the Switch 1 was going off the racks, how fast the Wii was going off the racks, they got it. And oh, another thing, the United States is in a financial crisis right now. So nobody's buying shit. And somebody did point out, and I'm thankful for it, whether they were trying to argue with me or somebody else, that no consoles were selling. Not the fucking Steam Deck, which the Switch 2 has already outsold in its entire lifetime. It's been a few years. Already, I mean, forget Microsoft. Outsold the PlayStation 5 yet again. It's outselling everybody. and it outsold its own self from the previous 2 months, including November, where it was reported by Nintendo Life. It had its lowest hardware sales in the United States in 30 years. Still outsold in November its own self from the previous 2 months. So clearly, there's nothing to see here. We're doing fine, right? Switch 2 is doing great. And Nintendo is not a panic mode type. They have a plan. This is why they've been around for over 130 years. This is why they're the best, because they have a strict schematic, and they are going to follow it through. They're having a meeting. They're going to see what's in production. They're going to see what's in post-production. They're going to see what's happening, and they're going to get release dates, legitimate release dates, because Nintendo is not the type to say, oh, yeah, it's this date. Wait, it's going to be delayed. Wait, it's going to be delayed. They did it once. And this company that the internet wants to make you seem as if, oh, they're evil and they're faceless, came out and said, we didn't like the direction of Metroid Prime 4, so we apologize, but we're going to start it from the ground up, do it all over again, go back. They told you every aspect of it. So people acting as if they had a revelation about why they thought Metroid Prime 4 wasn't good, which it was phenomenal. Based on, well, they had this. Yeah, they told us. Thanks for playing. But whatever the case, they're going to get the details that they need for all their games and the games that are being ported. With all that's going on, with everything that you have as a Nintendo fan, oh, my light's going out. I got to wrap this up soon. And me as an enthusiast, what are you worried about? What's the problem? Look at what Sony has. Look at what Microsoft has. Look at what you have. And yet I have to listen to shit like, you know what Nintendo has to do in this next Direct that's been rumored next month? Oh, they better have this. They better have that. Nintendo's got to save itself. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Look at what you have. It's not enough? You want a fucking AAA game every week? Yeah, would that be fun? Yeah. Is it going to happen? No. That's not how this works. They have a plan. They're not in any rush. What are you so nervous about? Why does the next Nintendo Direct, which, by the way, the fact that you have a Nintendo Direct, that you don't have to wait for Gamescom, you don't have to wait for, well, an E3, which isn't even there anymore. You don't have to wait for a convention. Nintendo gives you a tri-annual show with a little other sprinkles in between of what they're doing and what's being released. And oh, by the way, they have this other thing called a YouTube channel, which also gives you updates on games coming out and stuff like that. What does Nintendo need to do for you? What? Doesn't make sense. You have everything you need. Games are coming out. This is a huge year being advertised. You have a From Software exclusive coming out, which from what I've heard, the details of, sounds like it's going to be incredible. And I expect to see you, Bruya, and everybody else online when that comes out. We're going to have a friggin' blast. The game sounds like it's going to be tremendous and totally different from what From Software does. And by the way, folks, in case you're wondering, if Nintendo's going to make one, there might be a sequel. Just telling you. So it just makes me laugh at how Nintendo fans, and listen, I love my Nintendo types, right? They're smart people, more or less. Good players, too. When I had Paladins exclusive on the Switch 1, greatest experience on an online competitive game. I was winning 70% of my games. Then they cross-platformed it, and I had to play with PC and PlayStation and Xbox assholes. Well, my light went out. So I'm not going to do this much longer because now it looks like I'm in the middle of the night. Fans are having a friggin' conniption fit about what Nintendo needs to do. They have to come out swinging. They have to have 3D Mario. They have to have 3D Zelda announcements. They have to have another Splatoon. They already told you a Splatoon spinoff was coming out. They're not giving you a when because they don't know when specifically. Then they already told you Elden Ring's coming out with the DLC. They're not telling you when. There are also going to be certain suits, costumes, whatever, that you'll only be able to get on the Switch 2 version. You have so much coming out. Fallout 4 is coming out with the DLC. You've got so much coming out. The re-release of Dragon Quest VII, the Final Fantasy VII, if you're into that, which I'm not, it's coming out at the end of this month. You get to see Tifa and all her beautiful, magnificent titty Splendor, along with other beautiful women, that's the one thing I can't take away from that. They even make the men pretty. But you have so much. Sony has Code Violet. You're complaining? I'm not hearing Sony people complain. Yeah, they complain about Code Violet, but they're not complaining about spending $500+ on a console that has granted them nothing for 5 years, 6 years almost. You guys don't stop complaining now. You have so much. Well, listen, if that's what keeps Nintendo on top, keep doing it. But I wanted to, like I said before I left, I wanted to kind of call out those comments, which, as I've said, I don't even know if they're real people, but whatever. But it's just so funny how every time I talk about something that seems to be bashing Nintendo Switch 2 or whatever, I get these comments. You're trying to play slow pitch softball in the real major leagues. You're not in the same realm, okay? You got to wake up. You have to look at what you're talking about before you say it. Again, no responsibility. You're posting something that anyone who will jump on my channel, accidentally stumble onto whatever, can see. This is how you represent yourself. No knowledge of what you're saying. A hybrid, folks, totally different. Now, as I mentioned, I should have, because I wanted this to be a longer stream, Brian, and I'm sorry about this. This is our only way of really communicating right now. Unless you find me on Switch 2, which I'm not sure. I don't have my player ID or whatever. I don't know if they changed it. They changed that you could just find my it's CD Bookman. I don't really differentiate that. Got to have people know who I am. But I'm going to get out of here because I have to charge this light up. So I will be back on next week, folks. We'll see us in 6-7 days. All right? Till then.